In 2009, American geophysicist Adrian Helmsley visits his buddy, Indian astrophysicist Satnam, who is working in a copper mine that is 3.5 kilometers deep. Satnam learns that the Earth's core is being quickly heated by a neutrino flux brought on by an unusual solar flare. Adrian warns Thomas Wilson, the President of the United States, and Karl Anheuser, the President's Chief of Staff, that this heating will set off a series of events that will inevitably result in a world calamity. The American president warns the leaders of other countries of the impending calamity during the G8 conference in 2010 without the presence of any observers, not even interpreters. They make the decision to begin a covert mission to safeguard the survival of the human race. They will be placed on specially constructed enormous ships in the Chinese mountains known as arcs, but only 4 of the 9 planned ships can be built in time, with enough capacity to save 400,000 people. It was permitted to sell tickets to affluent people for €1 billion each in order to raise money for the project. The selection of artworks that will survive the catastrophe starts in 2011. The Mona Lisa, a work by Leonardo da Vinci, is one of them. When it is sent, a duplicate is put in its place. In the year 2012, Yuri Karpov, a Russian billionaire, hires part-time limo driver Jackson Curtis to take his children away from his ex-wife Kate for the weekend so they can visit Yellowstone National Park. Kate and the kids are staying with her current boyfriend, plastic surgeon and amateur pilot Gordon Silberman. While traveling, Curtis and the kids come across a U.S. Army unit. However, Dr. Helmsley's intervention gets them both released. They then meet Charlie Frost, a conspiracist. Out of Yellowstone Park, Frost drives a van and presents a radio program about the impending end of the world, which the Mayans predict will occur in late 2012. Frost tells Curtis that he has a map with the location of the arcs highlighted secretly. The day after Curtis and the kids leave for home, California begins to experience earthquakes and seismic faults. Curtis rents a modest private plane after realizing Frost was correct. He flies the jet off the collapsing runway with Gordon, his children, and his ex-wife thanks to Gordon's abilities as a pilot. While navigating around skyscrapers falling, subway trains bursting out of tunnels, explosions, and collapsing overpasses, they witness Los Angeles sink into the Pacific Ocean. The gang flies to Yellowstone Park to pick up a map from Frost while devastation earthquakes are recorded all across the planet. The fall of the Christ the Redeemer statue in Rio de Janeiro is shown. In the park, a massive volcano erupts, killing Frost as a gigantic volcanic explosion collides with the mountain he was standing on. In Frost's van, Curtis locates a map and takes off with the party. The crew lands in a destroyed Las Vegas in search of a plane that can fly across the Pacific to China after learning that the location of the arcs is China. They encounter Yuri Karpov there together with his boys, his cherished Tamara, who turns out to be Gordon's previous patient, and his private pilot Sasha. Karpov had already bought tickets for one of the arcs he intended to fly to in his private plane, but the plane's landing gear failed and the mechanic who attempted to fix it fled after learning about the Yellowstone supervolcano's ash cloud. Sasha discovers a Soviet An-225 Mriya 6-engine Antonov 500 ready for takeoff, but the aircraft is missing a co-pilot. Just in time to avoid the beginning of ash, Gordon is made to become one, and the group takes off with the Karpovs. Air Force One is also leaving for the arcs from Washington, carrying Laura Wilson, Adrian, and Anheuser. The president himself is adamant about staying in Washington. He passes away alongside everyone else under the debris of the aircraft carrier J.F. Kennedy after speaking the truth about the catastrophe in his final address, which was flung by the force of the enormous tsunami that struck the White House. Anheuser declares himself the head of state because the Vice President of the United States has likewise passed away and the Speaker of the House of Representatives is AWOL. It turns out that the Italian Prime Minister is also left behind as Curtis, his family, and the Karpovs fly to the parks. He and his family are also slain when St. Peter's Cathedral collapses due to an earthquake in the Vatican. Following massive tsunamis, submarine earthquakes quickly blanket all continents. Currently, the party is headed to Hawaii for refueling, but due to volcanic eruptions, the entire archipelago is in flames, so the pilots decide to land in the South China Sea. The group had not anticipated how much shorter the flight to China would be due to geological movements in the Earth's crust and changes to the poles. Particularly the South Pole's location on the former state of Wisconsin. The landing results in a plane disaster, in which the pilot, Sasha, perishes, due to an engine failure. Karpov later accuses Tamara of being her lover. The remaining members of the group are saved by driving a voice-activated Bentley out of the aircraft. It turns out that only Karpov and his two boys have tickets to the Ark, which the helicopters pick up. The gang is discovered by Chinese People's Liberation Army helicopters, Mi-26, delivering animals to the Arks. Buddhist monk Nyama, who is transporting his grandparents to the Ark, picks up others still on the road and brings them to safety. With assistance from a brother monk who worked on the Ark's construction, the gang arrives at the Arks and enters one of them through the hydraulic shutting system of the Ark gate. An earthquake damages one of the 4 completed Arks, and only 3 ships are loaded. Astrophysicist Satnam and his family perish in an Indian tsunami, but not before he calls Adrian to let him know that the plane didn't come for them. Unexpectedly, the tsunami is far closer to the Arks than originally thought. Anheuser closes the Ark gates before everyone has a chance to embark, despite the fact that everyone has already paid €1 billion for their tickets. Many of the victims of the crush die after falling from a height, but Curtis and his friends are able to enter. Adrian is successful in persuading the G8 leaders to allow the remaining civilians to board the Arks. Gordon is soon taken inside the loading gates after being killed inside the Ark. Yuri Karpov successfully lands his son Alec on the closing gate as the landing is about to come to an end. He then jumps to the ground, dumping his sibling Oleg in the process. The compartments near the gate, where Curtis and his friends are flooded and cut off from the other compartments as the gate closes and locks just partially open. The Ark cannot start its engines since the gate is open. After successfully throwing Lily and her doggy over the closing bulkhead, Tamara drowns in the water that fills the locked compartment. As directed by Adrian, Curtis and his son Noah work underwater to free the mechanism from the obstruction, which causes the gate to close and save the Ark from colliding with Mount Everest. When the flooding of the Earth ceases, it comes out that the Dragon Mountains in southern Africa, which have not experienced floods, are the highest point on Earth, according to satellite data. For the Cape of Good Hope, the Arks departed. The protective barriers on the decks open on the 27th day of the new age, allowing people to exit onto the open countryside. They witness a reddish sky with blazing clouds that obscure the sun. The Earth then manifests with the continents' shapes altered, with Africa emerging as the largest. In its place of Asia, with the exception of the Middle East, a massive ocean spreads out.